All right, episode 2 of the Rondo. Josh, welcome back. So good to see you. The first episode did pretty well. We got a bit of good feedback. You copped a bit of stick about your comments about Ronaldo. Would you like to take an opportunity to make a formal apology, or you're going to stand by them?
I stick by everything that I said, and come at me.
Well, we did actually get some good feedback. I fixed the camera. Some
Good
people
job.
were saying we're too zoomed in and too zoomed out, so we've tightened that up a little bit. And also, someone mentioned a bit of a format about getting 5 people, like in a rondo, firing questions at one person. That seems like a lot of effort to get what would be 6 people on a Zoom call every week. So I've kind of split it up today. So there'll be 5 different sections. We'll spend a few minutes on each. That'll be the most a new structure than last week, where it was just 3. And there'll be some fun interactive bit at the end as well. So looking forward to it. Thanks to everyone for their feedback. And as always, if you have anything, whether it's what Josh is saying or about the structure itself, just let us know. Comments, DMs. Yeah, shall we kick off?
Let's do it.
Cool. So first one, and I think this is the most predictable one, the transfer window. Now shut. I want to know the best performers in the transfer window, the worst performers in the transfer window, and then obviously some dark horses. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, we'll start with the winners, I guess.
Sure.
The obvious one is PSG, and everyone's making a meal out of all of their free transfers. I think it's important to note that free transfers aren't free because agents get involved. They want to slice. The players get sign-on bonuses. The wages of the players actually go up when there's a free transfer because they use it as a negotiating point, saying, you're paying nothing for this guy. Let's bump up the salary a bit. But obviously, PSG have had an incredible window signing all the stars in the galaxy. And they didn't sell Kylian Mbappe, which could be a win or a loss, depending on your perspective. Perhaps they should have cashed in on him, given that his deal expires next summer, given the ridiculous bid that Real Madrid put in for a guy with 12 months.
How much was that bid by the end? I saw it.
It was 160 million euros was the bid, which is a lot for a guy who's only got a year left on his deal. So arguably they should have cashed in on him. But keeping Mbappe obviously strengthens their bid for the Champions League title this season. Whether all these stars actually fit together in a functional lineup when you've got a lot of guys who don't like to do a lot of defending up front. And it seems a little unbalanced, but on paper, my goodness, what a squad. And obviously they're playing a little bit of a different game to everybody else because money is not really an object for PSG. They're just trying to gather talent. So selling Mbappe doesn't hurt them as much or not selling Mbappe doesn't hurt them as much as it would hurt another club losing him on a free potentially next summer.
Yeah, and I mean, those names are insane, right? Donnarumma, Wijnaldum, Messi, like Hakimi. It's just a stacked squad.
Ramos.
Would it be? Oh yeah, you forgot about Sergio Ramos. Overshadowed by Lionel Messi. Would it be a success? Say Mbappe leaves for free. They don't cash in on him, but they've won the Champions League at the end.
I think absolutely. Given what PSG's objectives are, and their objective is to win the Champions League as quickly as possible, no matter it doesn't hemorrhage their financial future. Financial fair play rules from UEFA have been shown to be toothless based on the Manchester City case, so they don't really have to worry about that anymore. So they're just success, and if Mbappe in the next 12 months can be persuaded that playing with Messi and Neymar is the golden meal ticket, then maybe he'll stay. Maybe he'll re-sign. He did grow up in Paris, of course, and he grew up a PSG fan. So we'll see what happens on that front. But PSG obviously have increased their profile massively, which is arguably the main objective of the club, given the backing and the sort of sports washing project that's going on there.
I mean, look, the Jordan brand collaboration is one. You know, you're talking about now a brand transcending a football club, going into all these like fashion spaces and cultural spaces. So definitely PSG, they were on my list for winners. But I also think, and I might be a bit biased, Manchester United, big winners of the window too. They got Ronaldo, which is an obvious one, but Jadon Sancho, who they've been courting for a couple of seasons now, and Rafael Varane, who I think is going to be just a massive upgrade, World Cup winner, Champions League winner, partnering Harry Maguire. I'm a big fan of Lindelof, but I think just even watching Varane's debut, just how much more composed and calm he was, makes such a big difference for the squad.
Well, I gave my thoughts on the Ronaldo transfer last week, so I won't go into that again. I would say it's been a good window for United, but they didn't get that defensive midfielder that they were
100%.
after. Sale going to Chelsea instead of United on deadline day is the big L. So I would say Chelsea are winners in this transfer window. They addressed their biggest shortcoming. It's harsh to criticize the team that won the Champions League last season, but they didn't have a reliable goal scorer up front. Timo Werner's problems with his finishing have been well documented.
Poor Timo.
They decided eventually that Tammy Abraham and Olivier Giroud weren't quite up to spec for Chelsea. So they've spent a lot of money, 115 million euros on Romelu Lukaku, but he is a proven goal scorer. He's already started well. He's on a mission to prove himself at Chelsea at his second attempt. And, fill the shoes of his hero, Didier Drogba. So Lukaku to Chelsea is a massive deal. And I think getting Saul as a midfield option on deadline day, and importantly, preventing him from going to United, where he potentially would have been a starting level player, is a big win for them as well, for a cheap kind of €5 million loan deal.
Yeah, and I appreciate you calling me out on that, because now that I think about Scott McTominay and Fred hanging out in the middle there, it does give me nightmares a little bit, So yes, I think we did.
Chelsea also winners. Chelsea also winners the fact that they sold so many players and got so much money for fringe squad guys. 40 million for Abraham. I'm talking euros here. Kurt Zuma, 35 million to West Ham. Tomori, 30 million. Zappa Costa, we haven't seen him for ages, but 9 million for him. They even got 21 million euros for a guy called Mark Guehi, who I've never heard of before. So
killed it at Swansea. So give the man some respect.
There you go.
Killed it at Swansea.
A huge overpay by Crystal Palace, I would argue. And of course, the longest serving player in the first team squad. They wave a fond farewell to perennial loanee Victor Moses. Goodbye, Victor. Thank you for your service.
Poor Victor. But interesting you bring up that Chelsea Lukaku dimension, because for me, I think the big losers of this window have been Inter Milan. I think losing Lukaku, they lost Hakimi. I mean, Lautaro Martinez was also kind of, flirting with the idea of leaving. And you look at the ins, they got Denzel Dumfries, but I don't really think anyone else can replace what Lukaku brought them, what Hakimi brought them, that dynamic. I think it's just different now.
Well, Inter have picked up Edin Dzeko, who is getting on in years, but given that they made a 115 million euro profit and replaced a striking position there, they're in financial trouble. They needed to sell these guys. The ownership situation meant that their hand was unfortunately forced. So Inter, they have downgraded not only on the pitch, but in the dugout as well. I don't think Simone Inzaghi, that is an upgrade on Antonio Conte. I think it's a massive downgrade. Yes. So that's the one that stings for me the most, is actually the manager deciding to leave, because the club's future was looking a little bit bleak. But they did what they had to do given the situation off the park, and I think they got good value for the guys that they brought in. Hakan Çalhanoğlu on the cheap, Edin Dzeko on the cheap. It's basically a Balkanchi FC as well, with Brozovic and Skriniar and all these guys. So I think they're going to have fun. I think they're going to have fun this season. I don't know whether there's this sort of aging squad that they've put together of freebies is going to be able to sustain the kind of title challenge that they put in last season. So unfortunately, I think one season Serie A wonders they're going to remain. But the off-field stuff meant that that they had to. Selling this mass fire sale at Inter Milan was unfortunately necessary. And you could say the same about Barcelona, the obvious losers in the window. I mean, losing Messi on a free transfer when he didn't want to leave is the most extraordinary bit of mismanagement I think we've ever seen. But the Griezmann deal, we didn't know Antoine Griezmann was going to leave when we recorded last week. Back to Atletico Madrid after signing for, what was it, 120 million euros a couple of seasons ago.
And he did that whole documentary. Do you remember that documentary he did about the decision? It was like LeBron James's kind of like, and also, why are you doing that, first of all? And then the whole thing was he chose to stay and then he left, and it was just...
back. But, I mean, 10 million euro loan deal with an obligation to buy for 40 for a guy that left that club only a couple of years ago for 120 million is just an extraordinarily bad bit of business by Barcelona, and really puts Atletico Madrid in a strong position. I mean, they're arguably the under the radar big winners of this window, because not only did they get Griezmann back, but they've also picked up Rodrigo de Paul, who has amazing statistics as a ball carrying sort of number 8 in midfield. And Mateus Cunha has been turning heads in the Bundesliga as a really pacey, exciting forward option, the Brazilian. So they look like they're going away from the traditional Diego Simeone 4-4-2 and maybe going to something approaching a 3 in midfield, maybe trying to play a bit more of a progressive style of football, although I won't, believe it until I see it. But they've got resources on the park now to potentially win La Liga back to back.
And I think it's an interesting shift in the La Liga space and even in the Serie A space. Like the old guard of Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, no longer being able to compete financially. And it's a good opportunity for clubs like Atletico Madrid to try and cement themselves a bit of a legacy, a period of dominance when they otherwise might not. But moving now to the dark horses of the window. And I gave this a lot of thought, and mine might surprise you. I think Aston Villa did incredibly well this window. Not just, Danny Ings, obviously, Buendia, but Leon Bailey, who was a decent player in the Bundesliga with Leverkusen. They brought a bit of experience with Ashley Young in. They loaned Axel Tuanzebe in. So it looks like they're doing, it reminds me of what Leicester City did, trying to build the squad with smart transfers, but transfers that fit. I think about when Tottenham sold Gareth Bale and they had that massive cash injection. You remember they signed like 11 players and they all signed on the same day. They took photos together. And I mean, the only player that sticks out maybe was Moussa Dembele, who had a good couple seasons, and Moussa Sissoko, who just departed. With the two names.
I think Christian Eriksen arrived in that intake, did he not?
Yeah.
He's probably the outstanding.
He was elite.
But they signed a lot of junk as well, and the investment did not go well. I mean, like Vlad Kirikesh.
Where's he at? No idea. But I've been watching Aston Villa's games, and I think they have a nice flow to them. They play well, and it looks like those new players. I've been very impressed by their work in the transfer window.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think getting £100 million for Jack Grealish is an extraordinary bit of business. Obviously, he means a lot more to Aston Villa than he would to other clubs. So they needed to demand the king's ransom to let him go. But they've reinvested that money super, super well. Buendia is a huge talent who's been looked at by clubs a lot further up the table. Same with Leon Bailey, who's been linked with a host of big clubs in Europe for a few seasons now. So they've invested young and they've basically preserved their Premier League status by signing Danny Ings. He's guaranteed to keep you up and then some, which is a fantastic signing. So dark horses, I agree. I actually kind of think West Ham have done a good job this window.
Yeah.
I really like the pickup of Nikola Vlasic from CSKA Moscow. Obviously did not have a happy spell in England the first time out because he was at Everton under Ronald Koeman, who never used him in the right positions and treated him horribly. And eventually he went off to Russia and has been in something of a footballing backwater for a few years now, but he's always proved at international level for Croatia that he is a top player, a really intelligent mover off the ball and a guy who will help create chances for the team, not only with his actions actually on the ball, but also dragging other defenders out of position and creating space for his teammates. So he's one player that could help build West Ham's play in possession rather than them just relying on transition like they mainly do now. They're quite fun to watch. They gallop forward in transition really quickly and they always attack when they can. But if a team sets up a little bit deeper against them, they're just slinging in crosses and corners, and that's really all they have. So if West Ham are going to go to the next level, Nikola Vlasic being the key creative component for them he's a good pickup. I really like it. And they've strengthened the center of defense as well. So, Kurt Zuma may be overpaid for him, but at West Ham,
he brings the vibes.
He does bring the vibes and is another threat off the set pieces. And, you wouldn't expect him to be playing for a team outside of the Champions League. So, that's a pretty good pickup for a team of West Ham's stature. So Forza David Moyes ball, I suppose.
And I think it's a good transition, West Ham, into the next segment, which is I want to talk about Jesse Lingard. Scored at the time of recording this morning for England against Andorra, granted. But a lot has been said about his renaissance at West Ham and whether he should have actually signed permanently with them and committed to the project there. But he's chosen to stay at United. I love your thoughts whether you think that it was a poor decision on his behalf, or was it actually smart to stay, with what United are building and be a squad player?
I think he probably should have gone back to West Ham on a permanent deal because he would have played way more football. And it's been proven through the likes of, Grealish earlier and Declan Rice and, a lot of guys like that you don't have to be playing for one of the big six in the Premier League to get picked for Gareth Southgate's England. It's not a requirement like it used to be. So Jesse Lingard staying at United, I don't think he's going to get that many chances in the first team with Ronaldo arriving and the squad looking so crowded in the front three. Maybe he could play a little bit in midfield in a 4-3-3. But again, I don't know if he fits the profile of the kind of player that United need in there. So I think he's really limiting his first team opportunities by staying, but he is a United fan, came through the academy, and he probably wants to play with Ronaldo and train with Ronaldo because that's got to be a thrill for the guy. So he's going to live his best life this season, but I don't know how much of that life will be lived actually playing football on the pitch. So I think it could be hampering his progress as a potential, England starter, given his recent form in the qualifiers. If he's not playing on a regular basis, will Southgate continue to pick him? I'm not sure.
Probably not. And I think, I joked about vibes before, but, he has a very good relationship with, players like Marcus Rashford. And maybe it was a decision made out of comfort. I want to reel off some of his stats in the last 5 seasons. You go all the way back to what I think was his best season in 17-18. He had 33 appearances, 8 goals was his highest return to date. Then followed by 4 goals, 1 goal. 2020-21, he was obviously at West Ham, where he got 9 in 16. And so I'm with you. As much as I love Jay Lings, I love the vibes and I love his youthful exuberance, but you forget that he's 27, 28. He's not a young kid anymore. And if you're looking to push for a spot in that England team, with the likes of Saka, Mason Mount, Phil Foden, you have to be playing week in, week out. You can't be sitting on the bench or not even on the bench, because when you look at that United squad, like you said, does he even make the bench?
Well, we've got these extended benches at the moment, so he probably does, but how often does he get off the bench? I'm not sure. He is a useful player because he's so versatile in terms of the positions he can play, and he always works hard. He always closes down space. Maybe Solskjaer sees him as kind of the kind of Park Ji-sung equivalent, not in terms of personality at all, but in terms of the style of player that he is, in terms of the hard work, pressing, good player on the counter attack. And
he must tag like Park Ji-sung.
No, I don't think he's nearly as good a defender, but he does have an incredible work ethic, and he is an incredibly dangerous player when space opens up late in games. And that's what we saw for West Ham with his scoring record. It was absolutely outrageous. Most of those goals coming on the counter attack and having shots when the ball's just released to him around the edge of the area. So, he can be useful in fits and starts, but I'm not sure if he's the guy to lift that United midfield to where it needs to get to, because United are already devastating in transition. I'm not sure how much Jesse Lingard adds in that respect. He'll press harder than maybe some of his teammates in those similar positions, but the attacking output from the likes of the players you mentioned is far, far higher.
Yeah, and look, I think we have to give credit where credit is due. I think he's a very intelligent player, very quick. He plays in between the lines and links up play really nicely. But when you have the likes of Bruno Fernandes, for example, playing up ahead of you, it's tough to break in.
He's just not a blue chip attacking midfielder / winger. His ceiling in that regard is probably for a team like West Ham, where he can be a core part of the squad. But also, he's clearly good guy to have around the dressing room because he keeps morale up. You see all those videos behind the scenes of his dancing and so forth. Like, that's got to be a consideration as well, because there's going to be a lot of egos to balance in the United dressing room. There's one particularly large one coming into the mix. So you're going to want, oh God, I can't remember. But you're going to want to balance that out with some happy-go-lucky guys. And Jesse Lingard isn't going to throw a strop because he's been, left on the bench.
100%. And maybe at some point in the future, him and Declan Rice get the band back together. Happy days. But playing for England in the World Cup qualifiers. Obviously, that's coming up in Qatar very shortly. Read an article today where Arsene Wenger was talking about maybe trying to push for a World Cup every 2 years. My initial instinct, a bit too much. Just having, in the last episode we spoke about, one player in particular, Pedri, playing his full season at Barca, Euros, Olympics, and obviously unprecedented times meant that the timing was as such. But in my head, my initial instinct to a 2-year World Cup is that, players are just going to be exhausted, burnt out. What do you think?
I think what makes the World Cup special is that it doesn't come around that often. And I think it would diminish the tournament by having a World Cup every 2 years. A World Cup cycle is something that a national team has to build towards. And we have too much short-termism in international football already, with coaches, getting sacked all the time and rebuilds and so forth. And they get barely any time to train together. They are criticized for taking players away on international duty, away from their club that pays them all their wages. And, all of these friendly matches are decried by fans as boring and interrupting the flow of the domestic season. So there's not going to be any more chance for international teams to actually gel together. And if it's all tournament football all the time, I don't think the standards are going to go up. I think it's actually going to go down. Yeah. You want that 4-year cycle as something that you build towards as the pinnacle, like the Olympics for an individual athlete. You want to peak at the World Cup. If it's every 2 years, and then how does the continental competition fit into that? The Euros, the Copa America, which happens all the time already, and all the other confederation tournaments.
AFCON,
how do you schedule
every
that?
2 years.
Yeah, well, AFCON already cuts into domestic football calendar and creates a lot of headaches for players because it's actually a disincentive to sign African players because they go away from the entirety of January. So that's a damaging thing for their careers. And then you've got the headache of, do you play a continental tournament every 2 years as well? So we have a major tournament every year. I think that's too much. That's too much for me. And I would suggest that, we take a step back and think about what makes the World Cup special, which is that it is the culmination. It is something that you wait for and anticipate. And then you've got the whole off the field dilemma of actually organizing a World Cup every 2 years. And if we're going to expand that to 48 teams as well, that's a lot of football. That's a lot of stadiums that has to be built. That's a lot of bribes that have to be paid to FIFA executives. People don't think about this kind of thing.
Look.
It's been a human rights disaster. Every World Cup that's happened since Germany, South Africa, disaster, Brazil, disaster, Russia, Qatar.
When I visited South Africa, I was going through Soweto, which is one of the largest townships, and I was walking through these townships, and the people were taking me through it, and I was like, they were all living in shanty towns and stuff like that. And then off to the side, there are these buildings, just furbished buildings that are empty with running water and stuff, and they're not allowed to live in it because they were built for the World Cup to show that they were caring about human rights. And then the moment it was over, these guys got kicked out. And there's clean water and stuff, and they have patrol cars that drive around these empty properties to make sure no one goes and lives in them. So you're 100% correct. I think the human rights side of hosting a World Cup is, it never became more apparent to me than that trip. But I made a mistake, because while I was reading this, I read the comments, went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I saw two interesting points of view. The first of all is how much of this is a financial play on FIFA's part. And then on the other hand, does this give countries an opportunity that never have featured at the World Cup before more chance to feature?
In terms of expanding it, or in terms of having it more often?
Expanding and having it more often.
Look, I think there's a good argument to suggest that you should expand the tournament to feature more nations, because international football is supposed to be a kind of mission that expands the game to places where it hasn't traditionally been strong before, and having more teams qualify will undoubtedly be a boost to those nations. Hosting a World Cup is not a boost to the hosting country. It is obviously something that draws attention from the outside world, but not always welcome attention. And you never make money off hosting a World Cup. Almost never, unless you've already got all the infrastructure built already, because FIFA takes most of the money through all of the sponsorship arrangements and so forth. So it's, I don't think that having 48 teams is a good structure, because it lends itself to various outcomes at the end of the group stage, which mean that you're playing with 3-team groups and so forth. It's or you have to compare the groups and have the third place team qualify. So it's not a clean structure. If you're going to expand it, you should probably, host it over multiple countries and go all the way to 64, because then it's a clean level of elimination. Otherwise, you have a 3-team group, and then you can't have simultaneous kickoffs with the last game, because it doesn't it's mathematically possible. So there are certain competitive outcomes from a 48-team structure that are not favorable. That's why I'm not into it. Not the fact that more countries get to participate, which I think is a good thing, but also from my perspective, I am a completionist and I like to watch almost all the games, and expanding it from 32 to 48 makes that impossible. So I don't like that part.
So if you had one message for Arsene Wenger, who's obviously now the director of development at FIFA, what would you be saying to him at this point in time as they're toying with this idea?
I would say take a stroll through some of the Qatari construction sites, or the, model villages in Soweto, or wherever you're talking about before. Like, take a look at how this amazing tournament that so many people get so passionate about across the world actually affects the people on the ground. And think about how FIFA could do a better job of helping the countries involved make it safe for the people constructing the stadiums, make it beneficial for the areas in which the stadiums are going to be built, and not just a showy few weeks in the European summer that ends up creating all of these awful white elephant stadiums that never get used again, and wasting a whole lot of taxpayers' money on things that should be going to, feeding starving people and providing healthcare and so forth.
100%. This game means so much to so many, but sometimes at this level, the people.
There are a lot of unintended outcomes, and in FIFA, there are a lot of, unfortunately, malicious intended outcomes as well from some of the people who've taken, literal paper bags full of cash out of this kind of thing with hosting rights and so forth. I mean, it's beyond scandalous what the I think it was CIA or FBI investigation uncovered a few years ago with
all the agencies.
The way that these political machinations are actually run behind the scenes. It's an ugly world, and I don't think we want to double the frequency of those events.
100% agreed. Well, moving on to the next segment. Like, I spent time in the comments when I was reading up about this World Cup proposal. I also had a look at some of the comments that we got on the first episode. And again, thank you to everyone that watched and took the time. It means a lot to us. And someone wrote a very impassioned comment about Arsenal. And I just want you to react to it, also keeping in account that Edu, someone that we were also very harsh on in the first episode, came out recently in an interview and said, this idea of even though they spent money, it's towards a rebuild, they didn't have the proper foundations in place. And so this is a comment. In 2 separate comments. The first comment is Arteta out, and he ends it there.
Okay.
And then he goes, you know what? I got more to say. Shambolic. Trust the process they tell us. What process? There's no direction. We spent big on young talent this season, which is okay, but loan out generational talent like Saliba. Generational talent is a bit much. Makes no sense at all. And then we put players like Kolasinac, Mari, Chambers, Holding ahead of him because apparently he's not ready. But the ones ahead of him are dead wood. I could go on for ages, but I doubt we will get relegated. So a bit of a roller coaster of a comment there. But reading that comment, it definitely shows the disconnect between the fan base and how the decision makers are going about it. Is this a salvageable relationship, do you feel? Or do wholesale, and I'm not talking about relegation anymore, whatever, but like, do wholesale, like, structural changes have to be made to reestablish that connection with the people that matter the most at the end of the day, the fans?
Well, yeah, a youth-based rebuild is all well and good, but the fans have to buy in to that and know that the short term is going to be painful for the long term to be beneficial. And the manager also has to be on the same page. I mean, if they really want to promote their academy products and rebuild through youth, why are they loaning out guys like Joe Willock, who could do a job in the first team at the moment? Why are they playing guys like Kolasinac, who clearly don't have a long-term future at the club? This is the balancing act between a coach who's judged on results now, week to week, versus a sporting director or a shareholder who's thinking about potentially the long term and how they can rebuild the club through young talent, which sounds good on paper, but when you get to the nitty gritty of losing 5-0 to Manchester City, it doesn't look so appetizing to go for the long term rebuild. So it's very difficult to sell this to fans and to the guy in the dugout whose job depends on getting a result this weekend. But having said that, I don't think this rebuild is particularly well thought out, because some of the moves they've made in the last few transfer windows make no sense if that's their stated goal. I mean, giving that contract extension to Aubameyang, that is not a youth-focused move. Bringing in Willian on a 3-year contract, and I know they've managed to tear that contract up, mutual termination, which is an extraordinary get-out-of-jail-free card, but bringing in a guy the wrong side of 30 on a 3-year overpaid deal does not line up with that strategy. David Luiz doesn't line up with that strategy. So is this something that they've just adopted this window? It's just occurred to them that maybe we should sign some young players. And then the other thing is, why do you sign young players? Why do you do it? Is it just like a virtue in itself? Absolutely not. It's so you can sign players for less money so that they develop into something better, and then you can either sell them or reap the rewards of having signed a superstar before they made it. It's cheaper. But when Arsenal do it, it's not cheaper, because they spend 50, 60 million whatevers on Ben White and Aaron Ramsdale. So where's the benefit here? It's not a virtue in itself to just sign young players. That doesn't do anything for you. If you're going to spend that much money, you should probably sign someone who's good already.
Yeah. I mean, look, some of those price tags are ridiculous. And I think it's also important to flag that you can't just have a super young squad. You need to have the right experience around it, and probably, having some old heads in the squad makes sense. But at the same time, when your captain is stropping around the pitch, it's a tough thing to sell, and I understand the frustration there. Yeah,
it also doesn't help when the most vocal bit of club media actually makes all their money off basically ranting about how terrible everything is. Arsenal losing directly finances AFTV. So, and they're, we laugh at them, but their perspective is actually quite influential and has shaped a lot of the Arsenal discourse. Are they a punchline?
100%.
For me, they are, but I think they do affect the discourse around the team and the mood around the team. So it doesn't help when, there's a vested interest in the team actually being bad to continue baiting clicks.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, look, and I don't want to be talking about Arsenal every single time we do the Rondo. So I'll end the Arsenal segment on this. Looking back in retrospect, where do you think it went wrong? Right? Like, at what point did we start? Should someone have gone, actually, this is not the right track. Let's, recalibrate and re-strategize. And then also, how much does brand play into it? Because Arsenal and Adidas are like that. They do amazing, kit capsules and all that kind of, the storytelling on the club is massive. And for me, I think they've run on that for a long time now, this kind of nostalgia of the past. And now it's kind of all caught up.
There was a great tweet a year or two ago. I think it was Old Firm Facts. After Arsenal put out that fantastic cartoon that launched their vintage look kit or whatever it was. And it was, did you know that retro sportswear brand Arsenal actually have a professional team and they managed to beat Sheffield United? So look, it can become a parody of itself when the team on the park isn't successful. But obviously you should try and make cool kits because people will buy them and it will make you money, and it will improve your standing in the kind of online discourse as well. When
Hmm.
the branding is obviously important, but nothing can replace on-field success. As to where it went wrong, that's a really interesting question that I can't answer in this short space of time. But I'll say two things. One is the Kroenke ownership has been a disaster for the club, the kind of penny pinching, and United would have suffered exactly the same fate had it not been for the fact that they are a commercial giant and it just makes so much money. The Glazers have been doing exactly the same thing, taking money out of the club in shareholder dividends instead of reinvesting it in the team for years and years and years. And Arsenal suffer because they don't have the same commercial pull as United do. They don't have an official noodle partner in every Southeast Asian country or whatever.
Hey, shout out instant noodles though. That shit is fire.
It works. But the other thing, you could tie it back to Wenger. And it's a strange thing to say because obviously, the Wenger out thing is a bit of a punchline now, given how badly it's gone since he departed. But also in the kind of late 2000s, early 2010s, Wenger made a big bet on the transfer market that football was heading towards financial collapse, and Arsenal spending within their means would mean they would outlast everybody who's going to spiral into massive debt. And that didn't happen because of the explosion in TV rights and competition revenue. So Arsenal didn't spend. Wenger held the purse strings very tight. And then they fell out of the Champions League when he departed. And the squad that his successors were left with wasn't up to spec. And that means that they don't get Champions League revenue, and their commercial revenue and sponsorships went down as a result. So now they find themselves in a bit of a financial hole. So Arsene Wenger basically doing the Big Short, but coming out on the wrong side of it, has actually hemorrhaged Arsenal's financial future. And there's a great Twitter thread. If I can find it, I'll get you to link it in the description, basically demonstrating this through spreadsheets from Swiss Ramble, who covers this kind of stuff. But that was the gist of it.
Yeah. Incredible. Arsenal fans, and I want them to know, right? We've talked about them 2 episodes in a row. I have got nothing against Arsenal. Back in the days, Pez 08,
some of my best friends are Arsenal fans.
Thierry Henry. I mean, those were the days, but I do feel sorry. Yeah, that's right. So, but this is a good time to the next segment, which is we're going to start doing at the end of every episode our Premier League picks for the match day upcoming. And we'll be keeping a tally. And we decided off camera that at the end of the season, whoever wins from today's episode onwards, we're going to buy each other a kit, because obviously since I've started doing more work in this space, been loving the kits, especially this one from Unwanted and Pepperoni Soul. But we thought it'd be fun to have a little bit of a competitive kind of thing going on at the end.
We didn't decide which kit, by the way. I'm not buying you a vintage J League shirt for £300.
Look, we'll sort that out. We'll sort out which kit. But it's good because the first game at the top of the match day, Arsenal versus Norwich. We'll take turns. You can start first on this one and we'll just rotate. Who are you going with?
I think Arsenal will win this game. I do, because Norwich aren't that good.
Yeah,
they have to. They really they have to win it. Norwich play really open, exciting, attractive football, and they get spanked and they get relegated. Good on them, but I just don't think they're going to win this one. I think Arsenal will win this game. It might be ugly and unconvincing, but I think they should have enough to do it, and that will slightly quell the pressure on Arteta. But kicking off before that one is actually the early kickoff on the Saturday, Ryan, and that's Crystal Palace versus Tottenham. A nice 9:30 p.m. for us here on the east side of Australia.
It was above the fold for me. That's why I missed it. Look, with that one, I got to go with. I'm going to go with Spurs. I think they started well, even though they've ground out wins. 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. Crystal Palace haven't been amazing. Patrick Vieira, obviously in charge there, hasn't really hit the ground running. So I think Spurs will get it done at Sellers Park. And yeah, look, Harry Kane as well, recommitting. So I think it's going to be a tough day for Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I agree. I think Spurs will win, but eventually this Nuno Espirito Santo defensive mid-2000s masterclass is going to come to an end, but not this week. And Arsenal and Norwich, what's your pick?
I want to go Norwich. You know,
Norwich.
I
Bit of
just
a Timu Pukki masterclass, perhaps.
yeah. Look, I think someone's always got to go, and it's Norwich who will get the top.
You
I
should do
think
the
Norwich.
promos for Sky Sports on this.
Yeah, Norwich. I think Norwich will get it done. Because yeah, one of my close friends is an Arsenal fan. I like to see him squirm, so I'm going to go that one. What
Very
about
cool.
Brentford, Brighton?
The hipster battle. This one, the two teams with massive hipster credentials based on their transfer dealings and XG numbers and stuff. I've been really impressed with both teams so far, but I think Brighton are the favourites in this game and deservedly so. They've managed to hold on to Basuma this summer, which is massive, and they seem to be cashing in on some of those chances they didn't finish last season. So I'm big ups for Brighton this season, and I think they'll get the job done by a slim margin. I'll say a goal in that one, maybe 2-1.
Look, I watched Brentford's Moneyball documentary. I loved it. I'm on board. Sign me up. Get me all the analytics. Ivan Toney's opened his account. I love Sergi Canos blistering down the right. I think at home as well, at the community stadium, I think they'll get it done in front of their fans and keep the bounce going there. But this is a big fixture. Leicester, Man City, to me, never fails to disappoint in terms of excitement and drama. Who you got there?
I'm really looking forward to this game more than any other this weekend, I think. I think this might end up being a draw. I'm going to say a score draw, but I think Jamie Vardy is going to score. He haunts Manchester City, and you just can't get rid of him, Jamie Vardy. He's ageless, even though he subsists on a diet of vodka and Skittles and Red Bull. Amazing. The ageless wonder, Jamie Vardy, without any of that Tom Brady fitness nonsense. He's an inspiration.
Look, I'm back in Leicester. I also am. Yeah, Vardy party. I think they can get it done. And I always love to see Man City lose, so I can't really tip for Man City either. Okay, so fair. I'm back in the Foxes to get that one done. And Man United, Newcastle, we don't have to say anything. Ronaldo's return at Old Trafford, number 7. I'm back in the Red Devils. Get it done over Newcastle, who are, you want to talk about clubs that are run like a shambles. Newcastle's one of them.
Well, I think Steve Bruce permanently has the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme that's following him around in his head. Nothing good ever happens to Steve Bruce. So I'm gonna say United get the job done, and it'll be comfortable, and Ronaldo will come off the bench and score the sealer and do his big celebration, and everyone will be happy.
You reckon he doesn't start?
No, I think he comes off the bench because you got to integrate him into the team, and he's just had a big international break for Portugal. You got to manage the guy. So I don't think he starts. I think he comes off the bench.
I think he starts.
Okay. Well, is that a side wager or?
No. Too many. It's going to be too many kits being exchanged on the first one. Southampton, West Ham.
Give me the Hammers. I'm
going to take the Hammers.
Really
you're high on
them
the
so far.
Yeah, look, I reckon draw there. I'm gonna put my name down for the draw. Watford, Wolves.
Interesting one, this. Wolves haven't started well, but I think they've been a little bit unlucky. So I'm going to say Wolves will win. I thought they were unlucky not to get a point against United last week. And, they've got Jimenez back up front. He needs a couple of games to get going, but he's a brilliant, brilliant player. So I'm going to say Jimenez scores the winner.
And
also bonus predictions in there as well.
Yeah, and look, and also they completed the signing of Huang Hee-chan like under the radar, and then he was just announced when they played United. I thought they deserved a win against United. I reckon they'll get it done over Watford as well. Chelsea, Aston Villa.
That's a good game. Good game. There's a few tasty fixtures this weekend, but I think I'll go for Chelsea because I think they're winning the title this season. So Aston Villa should put up a decent fight, but I'm not sure if they have the defensive resilience that Chelsea do. Not even close.
I'm backing my dark horses of the transfer market. Ooh. I reckon Danny Ings bags a brace. They get it done at Stamford Bridge.
I like it. But we'll see who comes out in the final scores.
Leeds, Liverpool. Tasty fixture, that one as well.
Leeds can't beat Liverpool.
No.
Liverpool are just too quick on the break and transition, and Leeds will basically abandon the center of the field defensively. And I think we'll see a high-scoring game, but I just don't think Leeds can defend against teams like that. The way they're set up is designed to make it easy for Sadio Mane and Mo Salah, unfortunately. As much as I love the bravado and the absolute fearlessness that Leeds United play with, perhaps they should have a little more fear from time to time. So I'm going to say Liverpool win. High-scoring game.
I'm in agreement. I think just watching how United carve Leeds up, I feel that Liverpool are also, they played that pace. They move the ball, I think, much better than United does, and they're more clinical. I mean, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, they'll get the job done against Leeds. And the final fixture for the matchday, Everton, Burnley. I'm finding this one tough to pick, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a toughie. Everton got a win last week, did they? Yes. Burnley, they kind of flattered to deceive. They've made a couple of interesting moves in the transfer market recently. I really like the Cornet signing. Really under the radar, good transfer. I'm going to say Everton win because they're at home. I think Burnley play much better at home than on the road. They really use that home advantage. And Everton, the vibes are good around the place. Surprisingly good, given that Rafa Benitez is in charge, and they didn't like that appointment. But, as soon as they scored a couple of goals, then Goodison Park was on its feet. So I'm going to say Everton win.
I'm going to go Everton, Burnley, play it out a draw. I think Burnley are a tough side. I mean, I watched them play against Liverpool, and they didn't do themselves, too bad. I thought, they're a predictable way of playing, but they're very tough. I just watched the way they just batter people in the tackles, and I think it's going to be one of those rough and tumble games. And that's it. The first Premier League picks on the Rondo brings the second episode to a close. And look, I'm looking forward to winning a kit at the end of the season, to be honest. I'm excited to add it to my collection. I'm obviously dominant at the crossbar challenge, so why not add another bow, and another arrow to my bow. Lost my train of thought. That's it. That's the one. So
hey, we'll see. Am I a good tipper? I'm not sure. I've never really been held to account for the predictions that I make on FNR.
Yeah, look,
just make them normally, and then people forget. So that's a preferable way to do it. But no, I'm looking forward to you trying to edit this really long episode. So
how long has this been?
Well, I went on a really long rant about FIFA, so maybe you can cut that down a little bit.
Yeah, look, because if there was sun, right now it's
the lighting has changed. So if Ryan's room suddenly goes dark midway through the episode, it's because he's played around with it a little bit. Yeah.
Well, look, thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you drop us a comment. Tell us what you think about the stuff that we've been saying, especially if Josh has upset you. We love getting those messages. And yeah, if you're vibing.
Angry comments from Sepp Blatter this week, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And drop us a subscribe as well if you want to keep following on and see who wins this jersey. Josh, pleasure as always. See you next time.
Thanks, Ryan.